Chapter 17. Before I left Paris, there was one last dinner during which time Gurdjieff indulged in one of his favorite pastimes, urging one of the people present to tell him an anecdote about one of Gurdjieff's encounters with a would-be student. The man who told the story at dinner was a self-styled raconteur, and the story itself is a typical example of what many people thought of Gurdjieff's devious and infuriating methods. The story concerned an Englishwoman, wealthy and well known, who approached Mr. Gurdjieff when he was, according to his custom, sitting at the Café de la Paix in Paris, surrounded by a number of his followers. The English lady introduced herself and was invited by Gurdjieff to join him at his table. She stated her business in a forthright manner. She had been told that Gurdjieff knew the secret of life, and she had come purposely to find him and to find out from him just what that secret was. As an inducement, she showed him a check for the sum of £1,000 payable to him, and which she promised to give him when the secret had been revealed to her. Gurdjieff showed his usual interest in the check, and then agreed to demonstrate the secret of life for the lady. He got up from the table, walked up to a well-dressed lady who was generally to be seen walking the sidewalk in front of the Café de la Paix. It was her beat or station, and with a profound bow, asked her if she would do him the honor of permitting him to buy her a drink. The lady had seen him many times and did not seem to think of him as a potential client, but having nothing better to do at the moment, she accepted his invitation, although she did seem a little suspicious of his numerous companions. He held her chair for her and then sat down opposite her, asking her what she would like to drink, and ordered it, something expensive. When she had received her drink, Gurdjieff again thanked her for honoring him with her presence, and then said that he had seen her many times, knew her to be a woman of good sense and many accomplishments, for which reasons he had decided to explain something to her. He began by telling her that, in spite of her knowledge and her experience, he would wager that she could not possibly guess who he was and where he was from. The lady suggested that he was probably from some part of Russia, but Gurdjieff assured her that he was not, and that what seemed to be his Russian accent was merely part of his disguise. Not only, he went on, was he not from Russia, he was not even from this planet, the planet Earth. The lady did not make any comment on hearing this, but merely looked at her drink, then at him, and then at the assembled group, and seemed to decide that she would put up with his conversation in return for the drink. Gurdjieff continued by saying that he came from a planet which was unknown to her, unknown in fact to anyone on the planet Earth, and that his planet was named Caritas. As the lady still made no comment, Gurdjieff launched into one of his long, wordy explanations, this time concerning the difficulties for the inhabitants of the planet Caritas involved in living on the planet Earth. One of the greatest difficulties for beings like himself was the question of food, as most food produced on the Earth was completely unsuitable for organisms from other planets. For this reason, he continued, it was necessary for him, at great expense and with great difficulty, to have special food flown from the planet Caritas daily. The lady finished her drink and was about to leave, a look of complete boredom on her face, when Gurdjieff ordered her another drink and assured her that he would not keep her much longer and that she would be adequately compensated for her time. Reassured, she stayed on, but still refused to comment on her obvious flight of fancy. She did scrutinize his companions closely, her expression plainly suggestive that she had inadvertently become involved with a group of nuts. Gurdjieff then asked her if she would like to see some of the food which he imported daily from Caritas, and she shrugged her shoulders. He then produced a paper bag from which he took a few cherries. He said that while this food resembled a plant that also grew on the planet Earth, it was in reality quite different. The lady finished her second drink and continued to stare at him. Would you be so gracious and kind, he went on, as to do me the great honor of tasting this superb fruit and telling me how it seems to you, what it resembles? Without a word, the woman took 2 cherries from Gurdjieff's hand, put them into her mouth, and ate them slowly. She removed the pits and dropped them into a saucer on the table. With undisguised sarcasm, she then stared at him and said slowly and distinctly, "It seems to me that they are cherries." She then held out her hand. Gurdjieff quickly pressed a few banknotes into her hand, stood up, made another obeisance in her direction, escorted her back to the sidewalk, bade her farewell, and thanked her again for having rendered him a great service. She took a long look at all of his companions, shrugged her shoulders, and walked slowly away, pocketing the money he had given her. Gurdjieff then turned to the English lady, smiled at her and said simply, "What you have seen is the secret of life." The Englishwoman gave him a look of disgust, called him a charlatan, and left, upon which Gurdjieff roared with laughter and returned to his writing. Inconceivable as it may seem, the Englishwoman returned to the Café de la Paix later that day, gave him the check, thanked him for what he had done for her, and later became an ardent follower of his system. The laughter was general following this story, but one person present asked quite seriously why it was that knowledge, Gurdjieff's kind of knowledge, had to be presented in such a curious, devious, secret fashion. Why could it not be made generally available to everyone, thereby benefiting everyone and improving the world in every way? Typically, Gurdjieff avoided any discussion of his devious methods, but made a pronouncement about knowledge. Like almost all people, he said, you not understand nature of knowledge. Knowledge, like very fine French champagne, is rare. There exists only a certain amount and is impossible to produce more. If you give everyone in the world one drop of champagne, nothing would be changed, no one would appreciate it. But for people who understand French champagne, when they drink, they appreciate. Also, they have money to buy this. But even if everyone had enough money for such drink, even so they would not buy. While what I say is true, that existing amount of knowledge is limited, receptivity for such knowledge is also limited. He refused to say anything further, and that person only remarked that he was as mystified as before.